was given opportunity, I believe there's something deep inside. Then I received your wisdom and your energy. Everywhere I go, I bring you to the fight. They don't know of your kind. A mystery to me, but when our stars align to the great beyond, we'll go. And an angel said to me, believe, when I was only 17, and by 23 I was traumatized and wise. I still believe your wisdom and your energy lives in everywhere I go. I bring you to the fight. They don't know of your kind. A mystery to me, but when our stars align to the great beyond, we'll go. To the great beyond, we go, love, go, everywhere I go, I'm looking for your sign. I'll bring you to the fight. Love is love, my love, and when our stars align to the great beyond, we'll go. To the great beyond, we'll go. To the great beyond, we'll go.
Thank you, John. That was beautiful. I especially liked the line that at 17 you heard an angel, and then by 23 you had had life, and you were still remembering, which is what this talk is about. Today's talk title is Change Your Story, Change Your Life. And I was thinking as you're going to do the 5 unity principles, that is the third unity principle. Your life is what you think and feel and believe that it is. And we live in our stories. We live in our stories. And of course we live in our stories because our life is a story. We live in stories. Our entire being of how we exist with people is in stories. From the time that you are a baby, we start reading stories to our children. And it's interesting how we don't really grasp the extent of the power of story. So if you think about when you're little kids, I think of this all the time, we read them fairy tales, right? We read them fairy tales about princesses that fall asleep or, have hardship, and Prince Charming comes and saves the day, And what we're doing is we're creating within them their belief structures. And I often say that when we are born and we come into this body, we were souls who incarnated into this body. We came with some stuff. We came with our karma. We come with our past experiences, of our soul's experiences. And what they say is that when you come in, you don't really remember. You have an essence of yourself, but it's not like you come in with all of the past. You have to slowly unfold the story. And what's interesting is that then in that we also are being told by others who we are. So yesterday, Rich and I went to Carter Lake. He is a surfer. I am a sitter. And so we go to Carter Lake, and he goes out on his foil drive that has an automatic motor, so he has this little thumb thing, and he zips up, and he's having the best time of his life. And I'm sitting. I'm doing my favorite thing, which is nothing. And we're resting, and he brought the fancy chairs that like lay out, the zero gravity chairs. And I'm thinking, oh, I'm going to take a nap. This is going to be so good. But there's these 4 boys who are playing. And they range from, I'm going to guess, like maybe 8 down to like 4 or 5. And these boys are horrible to each other. I'm mortified. I'm really like, I'm having this moment where I'm confused and I'm sad. They're telling each other to shut up, and they're telling each other they're wrong. They're being mean to each other. But the littlest one is confused, and you can feel that he's confused. And I was listening to the interaction of them, and I was really thinking of the human condition and how painful it is to be a child. And that really the older children are really playing out the information that's being given to them by the people in their lives. They're just replicating the situations in which they are, and at the same time, they're their souls, right? So at one point, the 2 youngest ones are playing soccer behind me. And I'm like, oh, please don't hit my car with your ball, right? And they're playing soccer, and they're fighting with each other about whose rules are right. They're making up the rules, and I made a score. No, you didn't. They're just back and forth. They're back and forth. And the littler one is trying to accommodate and learn how to have a voice in the midst of all this complexity. And eventually, thank God, they decided to get bottles and go catch fish down at the water, so they went far away. And I asked Spirit, I got my journal out, and I said, what am I to learn here? Because this felt really sad to me. It felt really hard to see these, clearly they're brothers or cousins or something. They're not being kind to each other. There was very little interaction where they were being tender to each other. And yet there was 2 other kids down by the water who were having the time of their life that were a whole other family who clearly had a whole other dynamic, right? And what came to me, and I'm so grateful for this gift, and I know many of you probably have this same connection with Spirit because we all have it. Nobody is without it. It's just opening to it. I said, what is it that makes kids so hard? And what are we to learn? What is the story? Because I was really thinking of this topic today. What's the story? And what Spirit said to me was, we come into this world with our essence. That yes, we come in with our essence. The Dalai Lama is the Dalai Lama, right? He reincarnated. They know who he is. He was probably a very gentle baby. He probably didn't come in with aggression. He probably came in a very gentle baby. But he didn't lay out the Dalai Lama right off the bat. He wasn't giving teachings right off the bat. But they were able to find him and to be able to recognize who he was by the choices that he made. They put out different things, and he picks, his dorje, and they do these things which help them to know that it is indeed the essence of the Dalai Lama who's reincarnated. Well, if you take it down to not the Dalai Lama, but our souls, we do come in. Spirit said we come in with the tenderness or the complexity of our past. And yes, we are offered this ability, but we are domesticated and conditioned very early on to protect ourselves. And what I could feel in this family was I could feel these boys were trying to figure out how to protect themselves. And what it said was, Spirit said, this has been the way for a long time, and we are here to change. We are here to change our story. And that if I looked over, no judgment, there was a whole bunch of dads who were over there. None of them were paying attention to the kids, and what I heard was a whole bunch of people talking and no one listening. It was like a whole bunch of guys, like all telling, guffawing their stories, and there was no attention. It was like 7 people and 4 of them were talking at the same time, right? And I was like, no judgment, but like this is the interaction in which the world that they live in, they're being told a story of how you show up. So we are all told stories of who we're supposed to be when we're children. And what is so fascinating is if you think about the gift of story is that you can choose whether you're going to have a hero's story or you're going to have a misery story. And it's the same story. You get to pick which one that you're going to pick. What is the narrative of it? And God gave us free will. If you think about the incredible ability for our souls to be here, we picked this time, we picked these people in our life, we picked this experience, and for some of us, you're thinking, that is crap, Rachel. I don't like my experience. How could I pick it? And the more clarity that I have is that nobody wants a boring story. I think I've probably said this here before. What do we watch on TV? You can only watch, what was that PBS show that had them in the, very popular, with the high society people. It was very slow. It was on PBS Masterpiece. What was that called? Downton Abbey. I love Downton Abbey for a minute, right? You can only watch Downton Abbey for a minute. And then you kind of navigate to some more exciting shows that have more of a story. Rich and I watched speaking of which, we watched all of Vikings. Anybody watch all of Vikings or Valhalla or any of those shows? Very intense shows about the Vikings. And one of the things that's interesting is I can't watch a lot of violence. It's really hard for me now. The more tender my heart gets, the harder it is to watch these. But somehow, because it was about history, it was a little easier to digest. But the thing that I was thinking about this morning was the Vikings did these intense things. And what they were hoping for is that they would be part of a legend. That they wanted to have a life that was so profound that it would live on in legends forever. That you would be great enough of a warrior that you would forever be talked about in the stories. So it's coming back to the stories. How do you present yourself in your story? And what's interesting about Vikings is that they were incredibly hard. They pillaged and they, came and they fought and they were intense. They're now the countries that actually are taking care of their people with the most kindness. Fascinating, right? They have navigated and switched and changed their story because we, with free will, get to always choose the narration of how it's showing up for us. So as I looked at these little boys, and I thought, what is the story that is being created in their own lives? We all have stories that are created and beliefs that are created from what our life was. And we, of course, are trying to figure those out because when you're young, you're coming in with your karma, but you're starting fresh as this soul in this body and in this environment. I've been saying lately, it's like you are your own little AI. You're only getting the information of what's given to you, and from that, you're creating your own stuff. Well, AI has hallucinations, and it creates stuff that isn't real. But it thinks that it's real because it only has this amount of information and it's starting from what was given to it. Well, that's what we did. What is a story that you tell yourself that is a belief system that was rooted in from a 4-year-old, a 5-year-old? Most of us have very core root pains, core wounds, that come from a very early age. And they end up being the foundation of your story for your entire life if you're not aware of it. And some people, those stories are to be loved and accepted, I need to be a good girl or good boy. To be loved or accepted, I need to take care of everybody in my family. Maybe it's not even be loved and accepted. Maybe the root core issue is the story you tell yourself is that you're not lovable. Maybe you weren't seen. Maybe you didn't get what you need. And when we start looking in spirituality about your life is what you think and feel and believe that it is, and you're running from a storyline that was something that made sense when you were younger because it was the only thing that you could make sense of a world that's very complex. This being a human being is not easy. There's a lot of layers to it. And so when we start looking at these things, it's not about saying that your parents did a good job or a bad job. I'm a parent. I did some really bad jobs, and I did some really good jobs. I did the best with what I had at the time, with who I was at the time, where I was in my storyline at the time. And I created stories in my own children that they now are working out. And I'm working out the stories that I created from my youth. And then we create those stories and we feed those stories. What ends up happening is that if you create a story, so one of my stories for me, and I can't remember if I've ever said this here, I've got 2 podcasts a week and a TV show, so I talk a lot. So one of my stories was I got in big trouble when I was 4. My mother was Buddhist. There was no controversy or arguing when I was growing up, which was both great and not so good because I didn't know how to deal with conflict because we never had any. So my dad was a musician, a hippie musician. He was gone a lot, and it was just me and my mom. And if she would just say, Rachel, don't do that, and I'd be like, okay. One of the stories I told myself was to be loved and accepted by my mom, just do what she said, that would be helpful to her. And because it worked for me. That was a story I created. And then Christmas was coming, and I was 3. I turned 4 in January, so I'm basically 4. And my mom had a sewing machine. And so she's sewing this shirt for my dad, and she's working on it really hard. This velvet, we lived in New Mexico, so this, you can imagine, this velvet shirt with the silver buttons, the whole hippie deal. And I don't really understand what a secret means or what you're not supposed to tell or you do tell. And she asked me to not tell him because it was going to be a surprise, his present for Christmas. But I was just so excited because it was so beautiful that, of course, I shared the secret. And I got in huge trouble. I got spanked, I got yelled at, and in my memory, I got put outside and they locked the door. Now, what probably happened is I got yelled at and spanked because it was a big deal and it upset them, and they probably fought and they probably put me outside in hopes that it would keep me from hearing them yelling. But I'm a little girl, and it was the first major rejection that I had ever felt. And it was big for my body. When you are 3 and 4 years old, you can't hold the capacity for what's coming at you. And so you create a story. And my story I created was never get in trouble again. Never get in trouble again. That was the theme of my life. You see how we're creating these stories? We are writing our life. And if you have a major storyline, if you're a writer, you have to have a storyline. So my storyline was be good and never get in trouble. You will not be loved if you are in trouble. And if I think about it, every single thing that I ever did had a root around not getting in trouble. I people pleased and codependent to myself to death to not get in trouble. When my husband and I started having life stuff, it took me a long time to realize, and it actually took therapy and working through Gestalt therapy, and there's a system that you can do where you actually sit in chairs. So as you start talking about something and a feeling starts to come up, they have you move into a different chair, and you speak from that voice, from that part of you. And this little girl appeared, and she was terrified of being in trouble. And I realized in that exercise that she was showing up in my marriage. She's a character from a very far away chapter. from a long time ago, but she keeps showing up and playing a role in my current life. It was not a 30-year-old woman or a 40-year-old woman, and sometimes even now is a 50-year-old woman who's showing up and handling a difficult situation. If I think I'm in trouble, she shows up. So when you start looking at change your story, change your life, it's partially around recognizing the value of these characters in your life that have created who you are, because your soul came here to learn. Your soul came here to have experience. Your soul came here to expand. Your soul came here to be you, to be uniquely you with your story. And every single situation that you have in your life is a scene in your movie. And you are the director, you are the writer. It is your script of your movie. And sometimes those scenes are dark, and sometimes they're joyous. But when we start to realize that change your story, change your life means that you have dominion. This is what Charles Fillmore taught that was so powerful. That wasn't in any other spiritual Western philosophies yet. You have dominion over your experience. What you think and feel and believe is the life in which you create. And you are constantly pinning your story in co-creation with Spirit. So this incredible gift of free will means that this child who's playing with his brothers or whoever they were, he's going to have some stuff to learn. You could feel that he was trying to navigate why it was so tough. And some people in their story, they create a victim story that says, the world is never good for me. Nothing ever happens right for me. I never get what I need or what I want. Well, that made sense for him at the time, right? And he can let that be his narrative. Or it creates a story where he gets really tough. And then he's aggressive and he goes out in the world and he tries to aggress. But then at some point you realize this is the 9 steps of soul recovery is something that I work with in my ministry and in my coaching, because just like the 5 unity principles, we need information that's going to help get us from here to here, right? And the 9 steps of soul recovery, I recently just reshifted all of it, because the first step is to recognize that your beliefs and your stories and your perceptions are creating the world in which you live in right now. And if it is not working for you, guess what? You get to change it. You get to rewrite your story. You get to decide that you want to co-create with Spirit for it to look different. And instead of thinking, I just want to spiritually bypass and just go straight up to everything's great, you're going to actually miss the juicy parts of the story. You're going to miss the parts where being in the depths of despair actually broke your heart wide open and showed you aspects of yourself that you could have never seen before. You're going to recognize those times when you didn't think that you could make it and you made it, that you were a hero. Those times when you didn't know how you were going to pay the bills and the universe provided just the right amount of money at just the right time. And you start to trust. And you start to believe, that's what John was talking about, you start to trust and believe that the universe is working with you for your story. You get to decide what it is. But at every moment, we're actually using our words and our voice to determine what that pinning, those lines are. And you can start to say, the story I'm telling myself is, instead of I am, right? Oh, I'll never be, anything, or I'll never be loved, or I'll never have a partner, or my kids will never be like this. And you start to say, the story I'm telling myself is. The story I'm telling myself. Rich's love language seems to be sending me Instagram stories. Does anybody else have this with their love language, with their family members? And he means love from it. So he's on Instagram and you'll see something that inspires him or that he's interested in, he sends it. So the kids and I are always laughing that Rich is always sending us stuff. So recently, he's been sending me a lot of stories around healthier eating, giving up sugar, and how we should invest our money, right? If you've heard my talks before, you know that I had a very difficult marriage for a long time, and we are on the other side, and it's incredible and beautiful. But there's still parts of me that come from my little girl who got in trouble, who believes that this is the core of the story. So every time he sends me a story from Instagram that is around not eating sugar, I think I'm in trouble. And the story I tell myself is that he's trying to tell me that I'm doing something wrong and I should quit eating sugar. So recently, a couple days ago, he had sent me like 3 in a row, right? And I got activated. I got a little annoyed, right? So I'm not perfect. I may be doing all this work, but I'm still a human being, believe me. And so he comes to the kitchen and he's like, something's off, what's up? I was like, oh, I was going to talk to him about it, but clearly I'm not holding it back. And my way of working with him that has been so successful is by using these new words. One of them is the story I'm telling myself. And I said, okay, the story I'm telling myself is that you're sending me these Instagram stories around not eating sugar because you want to control me. Because you want me to be thinner, because you don't love the way that I am, and I went on this whole thing about the story that I'm telling myself, and he literally is like, whoa, that is not at all what's going on. But I'm sharing this whole story that goes all the way back to, I don't know how far along, way before him, around my weight and around what I'm supposed to look like, and it just fell out, this story I'm telling myself. Because he's sending me things and he goes, babe, I know that I shouldn't be eating as much sugar, and I'm just sharing my experience with you. That clarity, that ability to come to somebody and not say, accusingly, you're trying to control me, but to recognize that I can shift how I speak to him, I can shift how I share, I can shift how I am perceiving my own experience. Because every interaction that we have with somebody is just a scene with us, with other human beings who are in their scene. And each one of those scenes is for our expansion and our growth. And what was beautiful is that for years and years and years, we would have an interaction like that, and it would be a bumping up against each other, and we would argue and fight, right? But we're working really hard on this clarity of this is the story I'm telling myself about this. And then the other person can respond in love and in kindness and compassion. And then I can look at myself and do my work on myself and say, how are you going to heal you? How are you going to step more fully into you? How can you embrace you? Because that first step in soul recovery is your pain and suffering, your dissatisfaction comes from your belief system. But the other 9 steps, the steps of spirituality, are around helping you to break down what those beliefs are, to update them, to move them, to release them, to let them be your soul's experience and your soul's recovery and your soul's journey, to step more authentically into who you are here to be today and not be run by stories that were created by you when you were 3 or 4 or 7 or 10 years old. Or by people that gave them to you, by being mean to you, little kids. This poor little kid, I just wanted to it's going to be all right. Those people don't know what they're doing. They're just hurting. It's just pain. So when you recognize that every thought that you think is a pen on paper writing your story, this is what's so beautiful about unity. We use affirmations, we use tools of kindness, we use awareness of how you have sovereignty in your life to determine how you're going to see your story and how you're going to write the story that's coming. Because you can write the story that's coming no matter what has come before. That just makes your story juicier, makes you more interesting. And some people have lifetimes that have a pretty, easy story this time. Okay. But if you see something that you're inspired by, put that into your story. If you see something that you want, write that into your story. Begin to recognize the value of your story. Never diminish your story. Step more fully and authentically into your story. And don't write anybody else's story. That was my main thing. Let them write their own story, and you write your story. All right, let's move into a time of meditation. So I just invite you to close your eyes and start by taking a deep grounding breath with a full release. Just allowing yourself to ground into your body right now. And I invite you to review your story with grace and curiosity. To allow yourself to tumble back in time if it feels comfortable to you, and ask yourself, what is the story that I've told myself? What are these beliefs and patterns and perceptions that might be built on stories that were created from woundedness in my younger self? And can I see them in a new light? Can I give them grace and compassion and really see how, of course, they set up systems for you to protect yourself? That was an important piece of your story. And in that moment, I like to just envelop my younger self and just give them that hug, that piece of really witnessing and seeing some of these experiences that we all had that were complex. But we do not need to have those wounds continue to write our story today. We can see them as incredible moments of strength, resilience, tenderness, compassion, opportunities for us to step more fully into a way of being that does not run from old storylines. You can change the genre of your life. Spirituality tells us that we can dream, that we can open up to the unlimited nature of the universe. Jesus said, with faith the size of a mustard seed, you can move mountains. Can you open up to the faith within you that knows that this experience that you're in is valuable and yours to completely feel? And those feelings offer you expansion, the gift of feeling feelings. Beautiful, complex, difficult, glorious. Giving so much love to each character in your life that has been you in each section of your life, each chapter. And recognizing that the chapter you're in today, to live it fully, to be completely immersed in your experience today. To co-create what is coming in your story next from a space of faith and openness and love and light. You are in your own hero's journey. You are a perfect child of the universe. Your soul is on purpose here. Stand in your story. Change your story, change your life. Feel the strength and knowing of spirit that is within you always. Thank you, Spirit, for this precious gift of life. Thank you for my story. Stand with me, write with me, co-create with me. Open my heart that I may choose the story that aligns with my soul. For this and so much more, we are so grateful. And so it is. Namaste. Thanks, Tom.
To that I say, change your story, change your life, and every moment I can decide. Change your story, change your life. Change your life, and every moment I can decide. Change your story and change your life.
Well, where we gratefully take your love offerings that help support this incredible community center, this spiritual center. So you can take your tithes and your heart. There is a basket in the back in which you can leave a check or cash. There's also a QR code if you want to do digital giving. I know that when I attended my Unity Church forever, I just got set up on the giving each week because it was just so much easier that way. So we just thank you so much for your giving. So let's say our blessing together. Divine love, as me, blesses and multiplies all that I am, all that I have, and all that I circulate. I am thankful. Say a mistake if now I know that there's an easier way. As soon as I could, I forgave. Whatever happened
was too young to carry that weight. Call it coincidence or fate, but I wouldn't say a mistake if now I know that there's an easier way. As soon as I could, I forgave. Whatever happened, if I was there, probably be scared too. I can't imagine. Oh, but now I'm laughing. Whatever happened, oh, 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 whatever happened, whatever happened, oh, whatever happened, oh, whatever happened, oh,
Wow. Yeah. Thank you, John Brewster. Isn't it wonderful to have him with us? We're going to miss him. He's been heading back home for the holidays and all of that. So please come to the concert. That's one more way to connect with him before he heads out of town. Thank you so much, John. Wonderful. And would you join me in thanking Rachel for her wonderful talk today? Thank you so much, Rachel. And you can remain standing. We're going to close with our prayer of protection, and then we have one closing song. We say this together. You ready? All right. The light of God surrounds us. I am the light of God. The love of God enfolds us. I am the love of God. The power of God protects us. I am the power of God. The presence of God watches over us. I am the presence of God. Wherever we are,